Close your eyes and imagine. You wake up at 3 a.m. with the feeling that you're not alone. Someone is in your room, breathing, watching. You can't move, you can't scream. Darkness is your only companion, and the fear is so real it feels like it's going to suffocate you. Now open your eyes. This isn't a nightmare. It was the reality for dozens of people in California for years. A man, a shadow, entered their homes, violated their lives, and left a trail of terror that has never been forgotten. This is the kind of story that makes us question, how far does human evil go? And more importantly, how can a monster like this escape justice for more than 40 years? Today, we were going to delve into one of the most disturbing cases in crime history, the Golden State Killer. A man who wasn't just a murderer, a rapist, or a thief, he was all of those things at once. A ghost that haunted California between 1974 and 1986, committing over 120 burglaries, 45 violent rapes, and 12 brutal murders. And for decades, he was untouchable. But how? How can a man live a double life for so long? How did he escape the police, the FBI, all the eyes that were looking for him? And above all, how did science and the determination of a few finally manage to unmask this nightmare? Have you ever felt unsafe inside your own home? Have you ever looked at your front door and wondered, what would I do if someone came in here now? Well, that's exactly what he did to entire communities. He didn't just steal objects or lives. He stole the feeling of security, the peace of mind, the confidence that we are protected within our own home. And here rests the burning question. If he managed to do all that, and still get away with it, what stops us from thinking that others like him are still out there? But today, let's go beyond fear. Let's understand how justice, even if belatedly, finally caught up with him. How science, persistence, and a bit of luck managed to close one of the darkest chapters in the criminal history of the United States. Are you ready to hear this story? Because it's not just about a murderer. It's about how humanity refuses to let evil win. It's about how, even in the darkness, the light of justice can shine, even if it takes decades. Between 1974 and 1986, a phantom terrorized California. He committed crimes so brutal that seasoned FBI agents struggled to comprehend them. Over 120 burglaries, 45 violent sexual assaults, 12 murders. The police had no idea who he was. Crime documentaries tried to solve the mystery. Investigators worked tirelessly. But this serial killer seemed impossible to catch. He left communities paralyzed with fear. Have you ever heard of the East Area Rapist? That was his first name. In the Sacramento area during the mid-70s, he would break into homes while families slept. He studied his victims for weeks before attacking. He knew their schedules, their habits, when they would be most vulnerable. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated terror by one of history's most cunning psychopaths. The level of planning was terrifying. Then in 1986, something strange happened. He stopped, completely. No more attacks, no more murders. The case went cold. Investigators retired. Files gathered dust. Families of victims lost hope. Was he dead? Had he moved away? Was he in prison for something else? Nobody knew. These unexplained cases haunted the detectives who worked them. How could someone commit such horrific crimes and simply vanish? For decades, this remained one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. True crime enthusiasts discussed theories. Podcasts analyzed the evidence. Crime documentaries examined every detail, but without new leads, the case seemed hopeless. The Golden State Killer had become a ghost story, a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes evil escapes justice. Or so everyone thought. The FBI had been collecting DNA from crime scenes for years. By 2001, forensic scientists made a breakthrough in this cold case. They linked DNA from multiple crime scenes across California. The ransacker, the East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker were all the same person. This was huge news in the criminal investigation community. But they still didn't know who he was. His DNA didn't match anyone in the criminal databases. Think about that for a moment. They had his genetic fingerprint. They knew without doubt which crimes he committed. But they couldn't identify him. It's like having a perfect photograph of someone's face, but not knowing their name. The frustration was immense. Murder cases went unsolved despite having concrete physical evidence. The killer was out there somewhere, living a normal life, thinking he had gotten away with everything. In 2017, a cold case detective named Paul Holes had a revolutionary idea. What if they used public DNA databases? The same websites where people send saliva samples to learn about their ancestry. Sites like GetMatch, where users voluntarily upload genetic information to find distant relatives. Could this technology designed for building family trees actually solve one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in crime history? This was completely uncharted territory in case analysis. No major serial killer had ever been caught this way. The science was solid, but the application was new. The technique is called forensic genetic genealogy. It works by finding distant relatives of the unknown suspect through shared DNA markers. Even if the killer himself never submitted DNA, his third or fourth cousins might have. And those genetic connections could lead investigators right to him. The FBI secret files contain DNA from multiple crime scenes, blood samples, hair follicles, biological material left behind decades ago. In December 2017, investigators uploaded this genetic profile to GetMatch. The database searched through nearly 1 million profiles, and it found matches. Not to the killer directly, but to his relatives. People who had no idea their family tree included a monster. Are you interested in how the police caught the Golden State Killer? Because this is where the real detective work began. Using these genetic connections, investigators hired a genealogist named Barbara Ray Venter. She began building an enormous family tree, birth certificates, marriage records, death certificates, census data. She traced family lines backward through generations and then forward to the present day. It was painstaking work. They looked at geographic locations during the time of the real crimes. Which family members lived in California in the 70s and 80s? They considered age ranges based on witness descriptions. The killer had to be a certain age during the attacks. They eliminated branches of the family tree one by one. After months of intensive research, combining forensic DNA analysis with traditional genealogy, they narrowed it down to just a few suspects. One name kept appearing: Joseph James Dangelo. Born in 1945, the right age, lived in the right areas. And here's where the case becomes even more disturbing. Dangelo had been a police officer. First in Exeter from 1973 to 1976, then in Auburn just outside Sacramento, until 1979. He knew exactly how criminal investigations worked. He understood evidence collection. He knew what mistakes to avoid because he had been trained by law enforcement. This explains so much about how the police struggled to catch the Golden State Killer. He wasn't just smart, he was professionally trained in crime scene investigation. He knew what forensic DNA techniques existed at the time. He understood how detectives thought. Some of his killer mistakes happened after he was fired from the Auburn Police Department in 1979 for shoplifting dog repellent and a hammer. Investigators theorized this firing triggered a rage response that intensified his violence. By April 2018, police were watching Dangelo closely. But they needed his actual DNA, not just his relatives. So they surveilled him. They followed him to stores, to his home, everywhere he went. They waited for him to discard something that would contain his genetic material. A coffee cup, a tissue, anything. Finally, they collected items from his curbside trash and a sample from his car door handle. The forensic DNA results came back. A perfect match. The odds were astronomical, 1 in billions or more. After 44 years, they had him. On April 24, 2018, police arrested Joseph James Dangelo at his home in Citrus Heights, California. Neighbors were shocked. This wasn't some obvious monster. He was a 72-year-old grandfather, a former police officer, someone who mowed his lawn and seemed completely ordinary. How did science finally solve this case? Through the revolutionary combination of forensic DNA technology and genealogical research. This was the first time such methods had been used to catch a major serial killer. The technique that caught the Golden State Killer would go on to solve dozens of other cold case murders across the country. Disappearances that had haunted families for decades suddenly had answers. The case analysis revealed disturbing patterns. Dangelo exhibited classic traits of psychopaths. He compartmentalized his life completely. By day, he was a police officer, a husband, a father. By night, he was a predator. He showed no genuine remorse during his trial. When victims spoke about their trauma, he barely reacted. This ability to separate his violent crimes from his normal life is characteristic of extreme psychopathy. What country are you from? Do you follow true crime stories? Because this case changed everything about how we investigate serial killers. The success of forensic genetic genealogy in catching the Golden State Killer proved that even the coldest murder cases could be solved with new technology. Law enforcement agencies worldwide started training detectives in these methods. The FBI incorporated these techniques into their standard procedures for unsolved mysteries. But killer mistakes still happen. Criminals who think they're careful still leave DNA everywhere. We shed genetic material constantly, every touch, every breath, every strand of hair. Modern forensic DNA analysis can extract information from incredibly small samples. Crime that seemed perfect decades ago can now be solved with evidence that was always there, just waiting for technology to catch up. The real cases that haunt us most are the ones that seem unsolvable. The serial killer who vanishes. The disappearances with no answers. The murder cases that go cold. But the Golden State Killer case proved that justice delayed isn't always justice denied. Science keeps advancing. Databases keep growing. The tools available to criminal investigation teams today would seem like science fiction to detectives in the 70s. How the police caught the Golden State Killer became a blueprint for solving other unsolved mysteries. Investigators started reopening old crime documentaries and case files. They retested evidence using modern forensic DNA techniques. They uploaded genetic profiles to genealogy databases. Within 2 years of D'Angelo's arrest, this method had solved over 70 cold case murders across the United States alone. The FBI secret files on this case were massive. Thousands of pages, hundreds of pieces of evidence, witness statements, crime scene photographs. For years, these files represented failure. An unsolved case that mocked every investigator who touched it. But those same files provided the DNA samples that eventually solved everything. The evidence was always there. We just needed the right technology to read it. Crime history will remember this case as a turning point. The moment when forensic DNA and genealogical research combined to create an unstoppable investigative tool. Psychopaths who commit real crimes can no longer assume that time protects them. The genetic code they share with distant relatives they've never met can lead police directly to their door. This is the new reality of criminal investigation. Are you fascinated by how they caught the Golden State Killer? The process involved hundreds of people, cold case detectives who never gave up, forensic scientists who kept testing old evidence as technology improved, genealogists who spent months building family trees, FBI agents who coordinated between multiple jurisdictions. All of them working toward one goal: justice for the victims. The East Area Rapist terrorized Sacramento. The original Night Stalker murdered in Southern California. But they were always the same person, Joseph James D'Angelo, a former cop who thought he understood crime well enough to never get caught. His killer mistakes weren't in how he committed the crimes. They were in underestimating how science would evolve. He couldn't have imagined that consumer DNA testing would exist, let alone that it would lead to his capture. This true crime story reminds us that monsters often hide in plain sight. Serial killers don't always look like our imagination suggests. They have jobs, families. They seem normal to neighbors. D'Angelo attended family barbecues. He went to his grandchildren's school events. He lived an apparently ordinary suburban life. The compartmentalization required for this is almost incomprehensible. How does someone commit such violence and then return home to normalcy? The FBI and other agencies are using case analysis to determine which unsolved mysteries might benefit from this approach. They're prioritizing cases with good DNA evidence but no suspect matches. They're retesting old evidence that was considered too degraded for analysis years ago. Modern forensic DNA techniques can work with incredibly small samples. A single skin cell can potentially provide enough genetic material. Think about what this means for psychopaths who committed crimes decades ago. Maybe they got away with murder in the 70s or 80s. Maybe they've lived free for 40 or 50 years. They might feel safe, but science is coming for them. Their DNA is in evidence lockers, waiting to be tested with better technology or matched through genealogical databases. The past is catching up. How the police caught the Golden State Killer isn't just a story about one case. It's about the persistence of justice. About refusing to give up even when cases seem hopeless. About scientists pushing the boundaries of what's possible. About the intersection of technology and traditional detective work. It's about survivors who bravely testified decades after their attacks. About families who kept their loved ones' memories alive. Serial killers have always captured our attention in true crime. There's something terrifying about someone who kills repeatedly, who evades capture, who seems to enjoy the violence. The Golden State Killer was especially frightening because he was so careful. He planned meticulously. He avoided the killer mistakes that catch most criminals. For 40 years, it seemed like he had committed the perfect crimes. But there's no such thing as a perfect crime anymore. Forensic DNA doesn't lie. Genetic genealogy can reach back through generations. Science has given us tools that would have seemed impossible when these real crimes were committed. The criminals who thought they escaped justice are discovering that the statute of limitations on murder investigations is eternal, especially when DNA evidence exists. The real cases solved through this method continue to grow. A girl murdered in 1987, a woman killed in 1992, disappearances from the 60s. Crime documentaries feature these solved cases, showing how the same techniques that caught the Golden State Killer are being applied everywhere. Each solved case brings closure to families who thought they would never get answers. Each arrest proves that science and determination can overcome even the coldest cold cases. Joseph James Dangela sits in prison now, an old man paying for crimes committed when he was young. The FBI secret files on his case are studied by investigators worldwide. How they caught the Golden State Killer is taught in criminal investigation courses. The East Area Rapist who terrorized Sacramento is finally behind bars. The serial killer who thought he was smarter than everyone else was ultimately defeated by his own DNA. This case changed crime history forever. It proved that unsolved mysteries don't have to stay unsolved. That murder cases can be solved decades after they occur. That serial killers can run but they cannot truly hide. Science will find them. Forensic DNA will identify them, and justice, though delayed, will eventually arrive. That's the legacy of how they caught the Golden State Killer. That's why this true crime story matters. Not just because a monster was captured, but because it showed us that we never have to give up hope for justice.